Hello, we are joining you from vNext in Denver. Hello. How's it
Hi.
going?
That's good.
For folks that don't know me, Christian Buckley, I am the founder and CEO of CollabTalk. I'm a fractional CMO and channel development expert working with Microsoft partners. And I'm also the host of the CollabTalk Podcast, which I do I guess officially twice a week. Have you been on both of them or just the one? I can't remember.
I don't remember
The
either.
MVP Buzz Chat.
I've been on at least one, if
Okay.
not both.
So I interview Microsoft MVPs and RDs every Monday. So hashtag MVP Monday, and then I push out the Collab Talk podcast every Thursday. And so introduce yourself here.
All right.
Grabbed him randomly from the crowd.
Randomly. I'm Adam Ball. I am the co-founder of vNext, as well as a co-founder of Cloud Revolution.
And we've done some stuff. We were talking today, it was sort of the state of collaboration and things that have been happening on the Collab Talk podcast. For those that aren't following along with our stuff, Collab Talk has been around, I think you knew this, since 2012 with the tweet jams and all that. And so there's been quite a following over with the tweet jams. The podcast has been 4 years, I think.
Wow.
So doing it for a little while. Well, the blog, those that follow the blog over at buckleyplanet.com, I actually, in February, had my 20-year anniversary of my blog.
That's awesome.
Like,
You've been killing it too lately, because you've been how many days in a row now?
So I am, for those that, this is a shout out to Tracy Vanderskiff, a fellow MVP, good friend down in South Africa. So she did 2 years of daily blog posts. And I'm like, well, I gotta best that. My goal was to do 2 years in 1 week. So just so I could,
just so you could take the champ.
Exactly. No, but I'm past that. I blew past that. I'm closing in on 1,000 days. And I'm nearing. So that's coming up in May, and then I'll be, end of August. It'll be 3 years of daily posts. So that's a lot of content.
That's a ton.
Plus doing stuff for my various clients. Plus doing stuff out on Techie Gurus. And other sites. Doing things for events like, vNext, for ESPC. Do a bunch of extra stuff. So it's a lot of content for any normal human being.
That's crazy. It's been so good to keep up on so many different things.
Well, one of the things that I love, so the Collab Talk podcast, again, those that aren't new to that, it's where the name comes from. It's around collaboration technology in the broadest sense. And I talk about technology. I talk about process side. I'm a reformed project manager and product manager. And so I have that, process background. I used to build PMOs, project management organizations for the layman. And I would build that for companies. And then also the cultural aspects of collaboration. And so there's been some interesting stuff. So I know, when you talk with clients, you're in the space, heavily in the unified communications space. Do you talk about the cultural aspects of the technology at all with your clients? Does that come up?
Absolutely. Actually, probably more so than the technology itself. Like, it's really about what is their culture, what are they trying to get done, and how does the technology aid and play into that?
It's interesting that because Microsoft did a major shift. Again, my perspective, having been at Microsoft 2006 to 2009, I joined to help launch what is now Office 365. And there was a shift that happened, and I know exactly how it happened from Microsoft perspective. It was the old Microsoft was focused at selling licenses, selling enterprise agreements, EAs.
Yep.
And what they were finding is that they were folding what became Office 365. And it was right at the end when the rebranding, it was MMS, Microsoft Managed Services, became BPOS, Business Productivity Online Services, then became Office 365, for those that are keeping score. With that change, it got through that first 3 years. So those initial EAs were expiring. And what they were finding is that people were not, these large customers that were funding Office 365 were not renewing, not at the rate that they had expected. And so then suddenly Microsoft woke up to what a lot of the MVPs, a lot of the experts were saying, which was adoption is important. It's not just about selling the technology, but how are people integrating it into the way that they work? If they're not adopting it, if they're not becoming engaged in the technology, it doesn't matter how cool of tools that you have. If people aren't using it, you're spending a lot of money on nothing.
Yeah, CFOs were definitely, and I remember that time frame, were definitely scrutinizing budgets. And if you didn't have the right adoption rate, if they weren't using it, it was, well, why are we paying for this? Absolutely.
So again, for the work that you do, you do talk about culture. What kind of metrics are they looking at? Are they concerned about now?
So interesting one that I saw for the first time probably in 2017 was how many minutes of PSTN usage are people using? And the reason for that was they were looking at, do you need a phone? Do you actually need a phone? And I remember I was at a customer site, and the customer actually came to us and said, we've evaluated all of our employees, and anybody who's using less than 60 minutes a month of PSTN, making less than 60 minutes of phone calls in a month, we're removing their DID. They're not getting a phone system license. They're not getting any of that. And then when they went back to is we're going to put these huddle rooms, and if you need to make a phone call, there's a phone in there. You can go in and you can place your calls. You can use your cell phone. It doesn't matter. But we're not providing a company. And they eliminated something like 1,000 lines that they were required to have. And I see that more and more now from that standpoint. And it's a really interesting cultural thing, because what if you walked into your employer and they said, well, we don't anticipate you making any phone calls. You're just going to join meetings, and we're not going to actually provide you with a phone number.
Yeah, again, it depends on how I'm reaching out to those clients. I mean, there's...
I know in our roles, it's like
right.
we talk to people all the time, but if you're the average information worker, say you're an engineer, you're a coder, let's say you're a developer.
But I think the answer to that question would have been different. It would have been more difficult pre-pandemic. Post-pandemic, I think everybody they have adjusted. They have changed. The culture of how we connect with people has changed.
Yep.
I was thinking of it like not us, not MVPs, not daily thinking about these things. But yeah, customers. I mean, this is one of we always talk about. We say with kind of a wry smile is that nobody talks about the positive things that came out of the pandemic, but one of the things that came out of the pandemic was more empathy for how we connect with people and how much room we give people for the dog barking in the back or the kids coming into the room and kind of all those things that 5, 6, 7 years ago you never would have thought of, like it would have been a bad thing.
You're thinking like the BBC reporter.
It's exactly what I was thinking, which I absolutely love.
Anymore, your kid comes in, it's like, what are you doing? Like, you just kind of look over your shoulder. It's
or introduce them, like, hey, this is my daughter.
Exactly, You're just like, whatever. It's not, nobody cares anymore.
Right.
Or like the guy who stands up with the suit jacket and stands up and has the
shorts,
the shorts on or whatever, and you're like, all right.
I still can't do that.
I
can't. When I'm done with work and I have like the pajama bottoms, the lounge, but I like walk around it. But if I'm going to go do a call, I have to go put on actual pants.
I just don't understand the people who can wear a dress shirt untucked. It just doesn't. There's a weird aspect. So, but anyways, yeah. No, I think culture does play into it, because like if you think about and I'm gonna focus a little bit in on the dev groups for a little minute, but if you're a dev group, you're working collaboratively internally, but with the tools that we have these days, so much of them provide point-to-point connections. So like I can message you on Teams, I can call you on Teams. I don't need a phone number in many cases. So from that perspective, it's just a matter of how do we really connect and communicate?
And there's a problem with that. So in the early days of instant messaging, you had, there's a few different products out there, but everybody remembers Trillian.
Oh, yeah.
And because, I mean, back in the late 90s, there was the problem where you had the dominant player out there was AOL Instant Messenger, and ICQ was still around.
Yahoo.
Yahoo was big, MSN Messenger, and there were a couple other ones that were out there. And Trillian built that platform that could combine all of those things. And then you ran into some of it worked beautifully for about a year. And then the various vendors started playing those games where they would make updates and not allow Trillian to connect and all those kinds of things. But the whole idea was that, hey, we're communicating on these various tools. We need a way to bring them together.
Interrupt.
Use whatever tools that you want. That's a problem again today.
Absolutely. And it's been a problem since 2013.
What I don't understand, so is you watching, listening in on this, why is it there are those people, and we all know those people, like where there's an email exchange, it's business related, you're sending them, you're trying to message them on Teams or whatever, and it seems like the only place that they seem to respond quickly to is like Facebook Messenger.
Yeah.
Or a Twitter DM.
Yeah.
And they respond quickly. It's like, why are you not paying attention to the formal channels around this?
Or SMS, just straight SMS.
Straight SMS.
Yep.
And but the people that do a blend of those things, so so frustrating is that they continue the thread. So the only way you could find out like what was the true conversation is look back across multiple locations.
Right.
But again, it goes back to the culture of that collaboration. And how do you, I mean, hopefully that's not, like, when you're dealing with external collaboration, you're going to deal with that a lot more than internal.
So I'm going to kind of maybe take a non-politically correct stance on this real quick. I think that there was, it's interesting if you go back to the 2013 timeframe, the more Microsoft started to play nice in the interrupt spot, the more walled gardens happened from other vendors. Like if you think about what was happening with, the Jabber client and things like that in like Yahoo and AOL and everything, and they all of a sudden started to put up these walls that said, hey, if you're going to use this, we need you to pay. And Microsoft tried to broach, but they all kind of looked at it, and I mean, I get it, especially at the time. They looked at it as a threat to themselves. If we're allowing Microsoft in, it gives people a jumping off platform of, hey, they're not going to use AOL anymore. They're going to use Microsoft because they can still talk to their customers and everything on that. But I really think that was a big play on that. We're starting to see some of that interrupt start to come back around, or that desire for it, because at the end of the day, Teams has become that dominant platform. And with that dominant platform comes this requirement from if you're a vendor, if you're a product that you want to be in front of people, you have to figure out how to play within that platform.
Well, there was, when Satya Nadella became CEO, there was, I believe it was, before it got rebranded as Inspire, it was the Worldwide Partner Conference.
Yep.
I believe was the first, if I'm remembering correctly, the first event that he did a keynote for as a new CEO. He, and just to very roughly paraphrase here, he talked about, he says, Microsoft, our goal is to build the best software in the world, and where we're not the best or where we don't have a solution, we need to partner, we need to integrate, right? All of that. So he said that right out in the open. This was, coming off the heels of Ballmer, and I was actually at the employee all hands where he was running down, we were out on Safeco Field, I believe it was Safeco Field, or where does the Mariners play? What's the name of their field? It's not Safeco. It's the other one right next to it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
Not a baseball guy, but running up to the stage, and he sees some guy recording him, an employee in the audience right by where he was running by, holding an iPhone, and he famously went and pretended to grab it and throw it angrily at the ground, and then gave it back to the guy and laughed it off and went up there. But it was like, point made. It was like we're not going to integrate.
You don't have an iPhone at Microsoft.
Correct. Then. Right. I don't. I got enough grief for having an Android phone when I joined. And
that was way more acceptable than the iPhone.
It will, but let me just take a pause here and say that I really missed the Windows Phone. I was a fan of that interface. So
You and like 3 other people.
no, there's a lot of us out there, and I held on as long as I could. But anyway, and then I went to iPhone. No, but there was that cultural difference. Satya recognized it. It was also Satya was a huge proponent of we need to do more with open source.
Yep.
And so, I mean, things shifted, very quickly at Microsoft around that.
Well, it wasn't just open source. I mean, it was when Satya came in, you saw the shift for the embrace of Linux. You saw the embrace of the Mac OS. So you saw all of a sudden all of the Office suite got incredibly focused on for becoming better on Mac OS.
Yeah.
Like the Mac version of it.
And people don't
Night and
understand
day
too.
difference.
Like, right before that change, before Satya took over, it was they shut down the MacBoo, the Macintosh Business Unit. That was when I started at Microsoft. That was in the bottom floor of my building. And I had a friend who helped run the lab there.
Oh, wow.
Good friend David Weiss. And so I always go down and visit him. I'm a collector of cool posters and things, and when they expired in the various, kitchen areas, they'd have the internal posters, and it was this series of posters for MacBoo. They did a bunch of cool stuff where they had, I'm trying to remember if that was the right one with the MacBoo, with the people, like a guy on a plane where he had like a little mini-me doll thing.
Oh, uh-huh.
You could actually, if you could win a contest, you could have like a little mini you created as a little plushy toy thing. Anyway,
Almost like the new bobblehead thing.
Yeah,
they
kinda
got going on.
but it's with that shift though. It really started to open things up, and there's other things that there's like the Open Data Initiative. I think it's ODI. There's a bunch of things where they're partnering with SAP and Oracle's in there, and Adobe, and
ServiceNow. There's a lot,
just tons of players. And you saw some of those players showing up at conferences and things, but it was still this separation. They're there at the competitors, and Microsoft would go show up at these huge other conferences, but they were viewed as competitors, and they started playing nicer. And it's as more of a product guy, having worked for a number of ISVs, so independent software vendors in the Microsoft ecosystem, so software builders, Microsoft has a very large and rich partner community. One of the things that we'd always say is like, you got to play nice with your competitors, because you never know who could buy another one. You never know who you might work for later. Kind of all these things, and there's plenty of opportunity. You don't need to go in and be jerks to each other.
Sure.
And work together, and just opportunity comes out of playing nice.
Totally. There's probably a bigger aspect of that, and I think going back to like the whole idea of COVID and like how we've come out of it with more empathy, I would say is that there's definitely an understanding of it's less about being cutthroat and more about being partner driven and partnership focused.
Well, and what it does too is that one, it helps differentiate, because you could have 2 or 3 partners that look to be doing almost the exact same thing. Like, so I was for years working for a SharePoint migration vendor, and there were other SharePoint migration tools, but when you actually look at how they worked, they were different. Different focuses, strengths and weaknesses for each of them, different price points, and based on what they need to do. And so, customers would love to be, I just want to put everything in a spreadsheet and look at it side by side and then find the best one. It's like, well, depending on what you're trying to do in type of migration, it was just a different story. But again, if you're having those conversations, if you're aware of, from a competitive standpoint, a couple things happen. One, if you're playing nice with those partners, you better understand what is actually your target customer, your ideal customer, and the differences between those things. Because I've even made referrals to competitors, be like, that would be a better solution for what you're trying to do, which is the right thing to do for customers in the first place, which is what Satya's point was. Let's do the right thing for the customer. The other side of that is that, again, you're going to find opportunities that you'll otherwise never figure out by playing nice, having those conversations. You figure out, worked for, again, product companies where we've found developed entirely new products because we realized, because of the closeness with the community, where the other gaps were.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that it makes a lot of sense there. I mean, I see it not just in what you just described there, but I see it all the time now where we see, especially in the third-party players, where it's like, we have this strength, but that company has this other strength. And I actually see, I've actually had contact center vendors pass leads back and forth to each other because they knew the fit was right for the other person.
I've done deals with direct competitors where one of our products, where they had a competing solution, but I was a member of, or still am a member of IAMCP, which is, for folks that don't know, for the partners, it's the International Association of Microsoft Channel Partners, and it's a peer-to-peer organization, meaning that everybody who's a member, like myself, when I attend those meetings, like, my goal is to find opportunities to work together.
Yep.
And so I actually had a competitor that approached me. So it happened twice with the same competitor. It worked out well the first time, where they said, look, we've sold them this product and you have a directly competing product, but we don't have your other product. Can we do a deal where we refer you, you don't try to get them to not buy our first one? And we're like, perfect, let's do it. And so we did that deal. And so we did, with a different product that they didn't have, we did another deal with them like 6 months later, and it worked out mostly.
Yeah. Let's say, it's funny that you say that, because in my day job, when I take my comms vNext hat off, I do that all the time. We've got a really focused group on Microsoft Teams phone system, and I have partners who focus in on the contact center or the meeting room spaces, which we do as well. But at the end of the day, they don't do phone system, and so we're able to step in, and we know what our lane is. And at the end of the day, we're going to just take on that and stay in that lane of, we're here to help that customer get onto Teams phone system or whatever it is we're doing. But we know anytime something comes up, we're going to pass it along to the partner because it's their customer. And we're going to do, like you said, do the right thing. It's kind of funny how such a simplistic motto that, Spike Lee had, but way back when, but
yeah, but it's, it really comes down to it. It's a better way to do business. It's more fun. I'd rather go and make friends, make contacts, have conversations. Are much more interesting. And because, as a consultant, I mean, again, I'm constantly doing different things and working with different groups. And so expanding the network, understanding better what people do, and sometimes the pieces don't quite fit. There's like, if I'm working with one partner, I cannot go have conversations with other players within the space. But again, then that contract or that project wraps up, and I'm aware of the space, and I can go have other conversations. It's back to that point of the change that happened in the Microsoft ecosystem. It changed products. It changed Microsoft's how they're selling their product. And then, as somebody from the SharePoint community, I would talk all the time around culture and adoption and engagement and kind of all of the soft aspects of a deployment.
Right.
Like, just like you said, it's like it's part of every discussion.
Right.
Customers worry most about that. If they want it to stick, if they want it to last,
right,
you have to be having those conversations.
Right.
When I started talking about governance and adoption and kind of those different topics, there were very few of us that were talking about it, presenting at various shows, conferences, and things that are out there. And now it's a pretty dominant area.
It's kind of funny, like you were just mentioning this, and then we were talking previously about Satya, and as he came in, what did that look like? And that tone that he set of, we're going to broaden our base, we're going to include the folks from the Linux or from Mac, etc., I feel like sets the tone for where we're at and talking about people now, because look at where Mac is today. Look at where Apple is today. It's so ubiquitous across the system. I mean, heck, I noticed this. I don't know if anybody else did, but in the keynote today here at Comms vNext, one of the demos was run from a Mac.
Which is pretty common.
It is pretty common
now. Yeah.
It is. And yet I won't throw the person under the bus because they were a Microsoft employee, but they were running a Mac. And so you have this whole generation that has grown up running on, and it all started back with, that shift, that cultural shift that happened in the early 2000s with those little colorful Macs,
Well,
the iMac.
let me just point out that with Windows Vista ran beautifully on my Mac, and so it was
not the only one that did it.
I know, but on that hardware, if you had premium hardware, it was just
you had to have premium hardware.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just a little head.
Right. Yeah. But you're exactly right. I think even as if you go and we're just at the MVP summit a few weeks back, and a lot of the Microsoft people were working off of Macs.
Yeah.
So it's very popular in the dev circles.
Sure.
Still, I'm a diehard PC guy, so sorry. I moved off of Macs in the early '90s.
Yeah.
And never looked back with my HP ES12, where I had to pay $800 to expand the RAM to be able to load Windows 3.1, and I've not looked back.
I say I've run so many different operating systems in my lifetime. I could start to go through ones that still don't never really ever grabbed foothold. But no, it's just an interesting concept of what was that cultural, what was that intentional shift, mindset shift, that growth mindset that Satya always talks about. And how did that play into where we're at? And going into that adoption, change management, governance aspects, how are we encouraging people to experience the platforms?
Yeah, and let me say also from a sales side, what I found is that, because sometimes, and again, my salespeople for companies I work for would get angry at me where I would say, our solution's not the right fit for you. I could have closed that sale, and we would have lost them as a customer because we wouldn't have been able to really meet their needs. And I've seen deals documented where deals were done year, 2, 3 years later because they trusted my advice because I made a recommendation of a competitor solution.
Right.
That's part of that cultural change.
Yeah.
And it's my relationship is with the customer, with the person. Understand, what are you trying to do?
Right.
And knowing that I may not have what they need.
Right.
But I hopefully know the person, know the solution, and can refer them.
Yeah, and in most cases, and I always say this in most cases, because there's always the exception of the one person who will take advantage of that kind of attitude. But when you do approach people like that and you're looking out for their best value and both their best interest, in most cases, I find that it comes back. This is not like some weird karma thing, but it's just when you do right by people, they understand it, they recognize it. In most cases, they'll come back to you, and at some point, you're going to do the right deal. You're going to have the right opportunity to serve them and be able to help them out with your services.
Yeah, there's a management books that I'm kind of a leadership development and management junkie, and a couple of books that I always recommend. I'm a big fan of Seth Godin, and if you're familiar with permissions marketing, but the two of the books that I always highly recommend if you've not read them are first is Purple Cow, which is about authenticity and standing apart from competitors. The other one that I love is All Marketers Are Liars, which is just a brilliant title. Yeah. And that's fantastic. And then the other one that I just since I'm on this leadership development, the other one that I love, which is the Marcus Buckingham, is First Break All the Rules.
Oh yeah,
absolutely love that book. Yeah. If there's a book that's nailed my management style, it's that book, which is identify people's strengths and manage them by their strengths. Use literally. Yeah. You don't build a team like by finding all the people that are perfect at everything. No,
right.
We have strengths, we have weaknesses.
Right.
Build your team around those strengths. It's the same with solutions. It's the same with products.
Yeah. Well, kind of going off of that, and I'll give my book recommendation. Although I like that fact that we delved this into a book report topic.
Yep.
Is The Go-Giver, hands down the best book I read in 2023. and most impactful. But it kind of ties into all the things that we're talking about here. It's a fable-based book, so super easy to read, and really, really practical from that standpoint. So.
Yeah, there's stuff I've not read that one. I've like the other ones that are fable based, like the Who Moved My Cheese.
Yeah,
then the
or any of the Pat
the goals.
Lencioni's. Yeah. So
Not that either. I need to.
we could go in on. So you talk about management styles. The 6 types of working genius is, and I actually was talking.
Okay. Oh, I know that. All right.
Yeah. So I was actually talking to somebody on the floor earlier today about it, and he made some comment, and I'm like, "You like that?" And I'm like, "I love that book. It is absolutely incredible to understand how business and how work gets done and how people fit into it." So, anyways,
I love that kind of stuff. Well, that goes right back into the culture, Steve. How important the culture is. It is. To kind of wrap things up, I think that is again. There's so much about the product. One thing I will point you to, if you've not yet listened to the CollabTalk podcast, I did an episode a couple weeks back with Microsoft VP of Product Adam Harmetz, and who was one of the creators. He was part of the team that packaged the Viva products with the experience, employee experience, solutions. And so much about Viva is about the culture and how do we leverage the culture and anyway, I would highly recommend that you go listen to that episode. Again, it came out in late March, early April. I don't remember the timing of it.
I'm way behind on all my podcasts because I haven't been on as many planes. Which is a good and a bad thing. Like, it's a great thing to not be on as many planes, but it's a bad thing because I'm like way behind on all my podcasts.
Well, Adam, really appreciate you joining me for this, and thank you for inviting me out to another year of the Comms vNext. And
Absolutely.
If you're not yet participating in this event, you got to come out next year.
Yeah, absolutely. So check us out, commsvnext.com. Follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. Sign up for our mailing list so you will know exactly when 2025 will happen, because 2025 will be happening.
And you can, of course, find the CollabTalk podcast. It's on every podcast platform that's out there. And I think we get the most listeners in on between the Apple podcast and on the iHeartRadio app.
Oh, interesting.
We're getting a lot of traffic as well. So people are finding us, but new episodes that go live every Thursday. So check it out.